The Fete of Death, Tara Trott, Book 1, Chapter 3. The fete was a subdued arena of glaring, unfriendly faces. Tara felt they had intruded on someone's wake rather than a village fete. There were a couple of large marquees dotted over the field. One was the ever-popular beer tent. There was a needlework tent, a pet show tent, and the cakes and pies tent. Apart from those tents, there were a handful of stalls manned by miserable, cold-looking people wearing bum bags, woolly hats and mittens, selling odd bits and pieces no one would ever find a use for. Tara wondered if they'd been sitting there from dawn. There was a catering van, which had a distinct lack of customers, and a faded Punch and Judy tent with tatty puppets, not doing a good job of entertaining the few children that were at the fete. A puny-looking man was trying out the test of strength, complaining it wasn't working properly. The ice cream van and the beer tent were the only vendors selling anything. There was also a dog flyball display on, but none of the dogs seemed particularly interested in running after the balls, so their handlers had to step in and take the dog's place, pretending it was all part of the show whilst their dogs looked on passively. Inside the cake tent, most of the entries were already set out on the long tables, waiting for the judges to taste them and decide on a winner. Tara didn't envy them. Most of the cakes looked inedible. They set their own entries out and scanned the tent for a sneaky peek at their rivals' efforts. Everyone else in the tent, it seemed, was looking at them. Perhaps it was because Tara looked like she was wearing knee-high Ugg boots, when in fact it was mud, which was maddeningly itchy as it dried on her jean-clad legs. Nancy wished them good luck, then skipped off in search of Tarndale's swimming pool. Tara couldn't swim, but at that moment she envied Nancy. Anywhere was better than the cake tent with its suffocating, silently threatening atmosphere. Tara told herself it was the lack of caffeine making her oversensitive. That, and Melanie Grinter's warning, which somehow seemed a lot more possible now they were actually in Tarndale. A terrible wailing sound started up outside the tent. Everyone milling around inside flinched. There were musical notes, but they were drowned out by the uncoordinated, sporadic shrieks of the singer. Molly cupped her hands over her ears. "What's that? Surely that's not someone singing." "That's Adam Pinder. He calls himself a singer, but no one else calls him that," shouted a grey-haired woman in a pastel pink coloured trouser suit. "Who hired him?" asked Tara, beginning to think she'd leave the fete deaf. "Someone who's tone deaf. It'll be the local council, also known as Samantha Inkler," the woman said as she pursed her thin lips. "Have you got a cake entered in the contest?" asked Tara, mouthing her words carefully so the woman would be able to lip-read her. "No, the pie contest. A blackcurrant pie," she smirked. "Mine's a blackberry pie. May the best pie win," said Tara, holding her hand out. "Tara Trott, Mavis Poole, and I'm sure mine will," she said, as she reluctantly shook hands with Tara. This was Tarndale, she mused. She didn't expect to get friendly comments from the villagers here. It wasn't that kind of place. Tara made her excuses and left the tent in search of some coffee. The music stopped abruptly because thankfully someone had pulled the plug. Tara's ears were ringing as she saw the cause of all the noise. Adam Pinder and his guitar. The singer had been bundled off the stage by none other than the burly Simon Salter. Tara hid behind another onlooker so he didn't see her. The last thing she wanted was for him to vent his anger on her for a second time. Adam Pinder threw a haphazard punch at Simon Salter, but he blocked it easily. "If you dare sing on that stage again, I'll put you out of your misery once and for all. Our horses are going crazy over there with the noise from your lungs. I'll have to get the vet out if you carry on. My old mare's showing signs of colic thanks to your tonsils." "I'm a professional singer," he argued, running a hand through his thick brown curls. "I'm not keen on horses. They're just like their owners, always demanding, and they like to trample all over folk." He pulled his black vest top back into place and walked over to a caravan in his tight black leather trousers and cowboy boots. Simon Salter glared after him, breathing heavily. Tara wondered if Simon Salter had managed to get her car out of the mire yet, but she didn't dare ask. She thought it best to leave him to calm down for a good hour or two before she approached him about it. She spotted the catering van and hurried over to buy herself 2 cups of coffee. She was in desperate need of a double dose of caffeine. 1 cup wasn't going to hit the spot, especially after the morning she'd had. She'd left the twins in conversation with a strange-looking woman inside the cake tent, discussing herbs. The woman looked drunk to Tara, and she hoped she'd be gone by the time she got back with her coffees. On her way back to the tent, clutching 2 lukewarm cups of dubious-looking coffee, she saw the same woman she'd left the twins talking to, rowing with Adam Pinder outside his caravan. Tara hurried past them as best she could without spilling any coffee, hoping not to attract any attention to herself. She didn't get involved in domestics. "It's over. I promise you, she meant nothing," she heard Adam Pinder say. The woman's reply was a slap across the face. "It's a bit of an overexcitable village, this is," thought Tara. "They're either glaring at people, milling round in sullen silence, or they're rowing and hitting each other." She was starting to take the tea leaf reading more seriously. If this was the secrets seen in the cups, there was only death left to tick off the list for a full house. She'd been nervous about death being mentioned anyway, but people didn't usually die at fetes. The tension on the field all around her didn't help matters. It felt as taut as a high wire and just as dangerous. Tara found the twins huddled in the far corner of the cake tent. "Oh, thanks very much," they said, each taking a cup of coffee off her. "Don't mention it," Tara mumbled. "That woman's balmy," said Molly. "What woman?" "That's Susan Smythe, the one you left us with when you went for a coffee. We were talking about herbs one minute, and then she suddenly started waffling on about poisonous plants," said Sally, shivering. "Well, some plants are poisonous," said Tara, not happy she'd have to go back to the catering van and get more coffee. "Yes, but it's not the kind of thing you talk about in a cake tent, is it? Poison." "I think she's drunk. I just saw her take a swing at her boyfriend." "What was that?" asked Mavis Poole, sliding over in their direction. She reminded Tara of a snake. She moved like one, had the stir of one, and Tara could sense she had the venom of one too. "I'm the local librarian, in case you don't know. Susan Smythe took a pile of books out last week on poisonous plants and herbalism. Strange reading matter for an alcoholic, don't you think?" "Did she now? No wonder she wanted to vent her newfound knowledge then," said Tara, not wanting to get into an in-depth gossip session with Mavis Poole, which she suspected was what she was trying to initiate. "Excuse me, ladies, I need to buy a coffee or 2. She weaved her way through the other cake competitors in the tent and headed back to the catering van. There were plenty of people wandering aimlessly round at the fete, but no one seemed particularly happy to be there. No one was laughing or looked like they were enjoying themselves. It seemed more like a funeral than a fete. Tara's sense of foreboding was growing. Adam Pinder sat on the edge of the stage looking drunk, swigging from a beer can. Tara hurriedly walked past him, making sure she didn't make eye contact with him. The sneaky Mavis Poole was someone else she wanted to avoid. She was grateful she didn't live in neither cot. Tara bought 2 more cups of coffee and headed back to the cake tent, hoping that this time she might get to drink both cups herself. The man at the catering van had handed the coffees over in silence. She doubted he'd spoken a word all morning to anyone other than to state the price to their surprisingly few customers. They weren't run off their feet. In fact, Tara mused, the odds and ends stall seemed to have more in the way of potential customers hanging round it than the catering van. It was the only catering van on the field, so you would have expected it to be enjoying a brisk trade, dishing out greasy breakfasts and lukewarm drinks, but its customers were few and far between. A brownie handed Adam Pinder a note. Tara saw him read it, as though he was struggling to see the words. She assumed the note was off Susan Smythe apologising for their earlier row, although most people would send an apology after a bust-up of that magnitude by text or phone call. Anyone could read a note, including the brownie who'd given it to him, as it wasn't in an envelope. Tara knew if she'd have had been the brownie, she'd have read it. Tara was wondering what the note said and didn't see the tall brunette woman walk backwards out of the cake tent straight into her and her precious cargo of coffee till she was wearing the coffee. "Watch it," the woman snarled, her postbox red mouth smeared with shiny lipstick. Her lips receded over her white artificial-looking teeth in a sneer aimed directly at Tara. Her badge, pinned carefully onto her expensive-looking tailored tweed jacket, said, "Samantha Inkler, Judge." Tara looked down in dismay at the now almost empty cups and the rapidly spreading stain meandering down her shirt, which was giving off steam in the cold air. Tara knew it would cool quickly, and there was nothing worse than cold, wet clothes, especially if you were wearing them. "You were the one walking backwards," snapped Tara. "It's you that needs to watch where you're going." Tara hoped she could pour what was left of the coffee into one of the cups and salvage half a cupful at least. Any coffee was better than none at all. "I'm a judge, and I'm also a member of the local council. You should give way to people like me, filthy urchin," she said, wrinkling her nose at Tara's muddy legs and stained clothes. "I'll just bet you're one of those pony owners who keep harassing me over the demise of this grotty field, aren't you?" "No, I'm not. I don't even live in this bloody awful village of yours. I'm only here for the day, and believe me, even that seems far too long. I won't be coming back any time soon," said Tara, her nails digging into the polystyrene cups in temper. Tara noticed Samantha Inkler's stylish heeled wellies and made a mental note to buy herself a pair just like them, but in black, not cherry red like Samantha Inkler's, when she next went to Foxdale. Samantha Inkler stared down at Tara in disgust. She was the height and build of a supermodel, so it wasn't hard to do with Tara only being 5'5". Then something or someone else caught her eye. Tara glanced over in the same direction. Samantha Inkler had seen Adam Pinder staggering over to his caravan, and she ran after him, forgetting all about Tara Trott. She was shouting about getting the environmental health out to prosecute him, and that he could expect a council letter about it first thing Monday morning. Tara ran inside the cake tent to escape the madness. The last thing she needed was to get involved in yet another row, especially with her not yet managing to have any coffee. She'd poured what was left of her 2 cups into 1 cup, but it had a dead fly floating on the top, so she couldn't bring herself to drink it. The twins were talking to 2 teenage cake competitors. They both looked to be about 18 to 19 years old and had the glowing makeup-free faces that plenty of fresh air and exercise seemed to give you. Tara decided long ago that she was allergic to exercise. Every time she tried some form of it, she'd ended up injured, so she avoided it whenever she could. The only way she kept her slim figure was because Nancy ate all the cakes she baked. Tara, this is Cheryl Trellon. She keeps a horse in this field, and this is her friend Annabelle Thompson. She's got 2 horses in this field. Horsey girls, just like we were when we were young girls, said Molly, her face lighting up at her childhood memories. Tara thought both girls looked like horsey girls, with their riding hats hooked over their arms like handbags and matching chunky jumpers, black jodhpurs and riding boots. They certainly smelled horsey. They'd obviously spent a busy morning cleaning the stables out. Annabelle Thompson had blonde curly hair scraped into a ponytail and ice blue eyes, and Cheryl Trellon had a ponytail taming her long black hair. At last, some friendly faces. I just literally bumped into Samantha Inkler, one of the judges, and she didn't like it one bit, but I was the one who got coffee all down me. She's a nasty piece of work. It was her idea to have a fete on this field. No one else was keen after what happened the last time with the jam, but when she sets her mind on something, nothing stops her. The mayor, Peter Lehman, eventually gave in to her and said she could have the fete if she organised everything. We tried to tell her it would churn up the field for our horses, but she wouldn't listen, said Annabelle Thompson, her eyes red and puffy. Even Simon Salter couldn't get her to listen. He went round to her office a few times, but she rang the police and had him thrown out, said Cheryl Trellon. If you ask me, I think she planned all of this so it would ruin the field for our horses. They'll get mud rash for sure now. She'll get her just deserts, that madam will, said Mavis Poole, glancing sideways at Annabelle Thompson. That kind of woman always gets away with murder, said Annabelle Thompson. People either get out of her way or she runs right over them. The conversation was getting a bit too gossipy in the cake tent for Tara's liking. She didn't want to stand around slating a judge whom she'd never met before that day, and she certainly wasn't interested in her personal life either. What she did want to do was comment on the other competitors' cakes and pies on display. There were some real shockers entered. Susan Smythe's entry was a car crash as far as cakes are concerned. It looked completely inedible. It was meant to be a Victoria sandwich, but it looked more like a stone than a sponge. There was no evidence of any air bubbles. The buttercream had lumps in it, and she'd smothered the abomination with lurid green icing. There was no jam either. Tara was surprised she'd entered the competition, as she didn't look much like a baker. She looked as though she would have been more at home in a pub, propping up a bar, than whisking cake batter in a kitchen. Some of the entries, unbelievably, were worse. The second the knife sliced through, or at least tried to in some cases, the texture and quality of the bake had no hiding place. Some disintegrated into pellets of overbaked crumbs, and some melted into a congealed, uncooked puddle. With some of the cakes, it was impossible to tell what kind of a cake they were meant to be. The standard of baking in the Tarndale kitchens left a lot to be desired, and Tara was hopeful of her chances of walking away with a prize. The twins' muffins were another story. They were still as pungent, but they assured her it was the herbs that would floor the judges. They also promised their muffins would even put a smile on the sour face of Samantha Inkler. Tara once more set off for the catering van. They silently handed her a coffee with 2 sugars and milk in it. The villagers might be a bit hot-headed, she thought, but they've got good customer service. Shame the coffee is the cheap instant stuff, and I seem to be their only customer. But at least I didn't have to queue up, she thought. She was hugely relieved to finally have a full cup of hot coffee in her hands. She planned to drink that cup, then go back to the van for a second one. That way, the twins wouldn't think she'd brought drinks for them again. No one was going to take or knock this one out of her hands. Susan Smythe ran out of Adam Pinder's caravan screaming, just as Tara walked past, almost knocking her and her prized coffee flying. He's dead! Someone's killed Adam, she screeched. Tara dropped the cup of coffee in shock.